How can we get more women into insurance and financial services? Hello and welcome to the Boostara podcast. I am your host, James. On the Boostara podcast, we speak to leaders in business and uncover the truths and insights from their amazing experiences. At Boostara, we help businesses boost growth, cut costs, and gain better business insight. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you, type the word growth into the comments below and I will be sure to reach out. Today, with a big smile on her face, brightening my morning today, we are joined by the amazing Laura Witcher, Director of Insurance and Financial Services at Enable Recruitment. Hello and welcome, Laura.
Hello, how are you?
I am excellent today. I was just telling you a second ago, I need to have my coffee before I really get going. I'm at that stage in the morning, but it's
Yeah.
fantastic to have you on, Laura. I mean, firstly, for those that don't know yourself, don't know Enable Recruitment, could you just give us, and I know a little bit hard to condense, a bit of a background history on your sort of, professional routing to, where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, similar story to a lot of people finishing uni, not quite sure what to do. So actually my first role was in the insurance sector, which kind of ties in nicely to where I am now. So I got my first real taste of working in an office. It was a call center, cold calling, setting up people's van insurance, I think it was, but it was a very heavily targeted sales role. And I remember even to this day, I don't know if the record's been broken, but I managed to insure the most amount of van policies in one day, which
Oh,
didn't
wow.
fall under a fleet policy, and made the most commission income in one day. And that's something I was very proud of. And also it made me a nice amount of bonus.
Is that a number you can share with us? That's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
interesting.
But no, and I think that was my real first taste for sales. And I was like, wow, I love this. I think I've always had a very entrepreneurial mindset from a kid. I would, charge my parents for making them cups of tea. I would set up shop outside the house, lemonade stands. So I was very incentivized by money in sales. And then someone actually approached me and said, well, look, you can make more money in recruitment, get better commission. And I was sold. And here I am, I think, 12 years later, in an industry that has, I've seen it through financial crisis, obviously COVID. We're probably in a tougher market this year as well than I've seen for the last few years. Um, but through it all, I still love it, which is why I'm still here. But yeah, throughout the majority of my time, I have stayed mainly within the insurance and financial services sector. I did have a brief stint within the tech world, and it just wasn't something I could get my head around, to be honest. But and I've worked my way up through my billings and I guess my people management skills, and recently came over to Enable in February this year to set up an insurance division, head that up, and then with the aim to grow the team and build my own insurance desk.
Amazing, amazing. And just touching back on, what you said there, that, you went into the tech world, you were, recruiting in the tech world for a short period. How different is it when you go from one, niche recruitment, industry to another? Because I suppose from, one side, people might think, well, recruitment's recruitment.
Mm.
It's just finding people and placing them in appropriate organizations. But how is it different when you're working between different types of sectors?
I think for the tech world, like, you have to have an interest, first of all, within the latest tech. You have to understand. And to me, I found it like learning a foreign language, because you've got all these words like Python, Ruby, .NET, C Sharp, and you need to be able to speak this language to developers, and other people in the tech world. And I'll be honest, I just didn't understand it. it didn't personally interest me.
Yeah.
So I find it hard to have conversations with people where their passion is not something I fully understand and can relate to.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, like when I worked in the tech world, I wasn't a particularly good biller. I struggled. I wasn't able to have the conversations that I wanted to have. Whereas when I've moved into the insurance world, brokers are very much like recruiters, right? They are the middleman between the insurer and the client.
Right.
So they are going out and selling a product. They're working against other brokers to compete in this market. They're salespeople. There's a lot of networking. There's a lot of events. And to me, I mean, times are changing now, which I'm sure we'll touch on. The insurance world, in my eyes, kind of mirrors a lot of what we do as recruiters. And it was just something I got on better with. I could speak their language. I had a tiny bit of, I guess, a validity in a way because I'd worked in the insurance industry. So I kind of could back myself up a little bit with what I was talking about. Um, and I think with the insurance world as well, people stay in the industry. Once they're in, very rarely do people leave. So, I've got friends and people I've placed with 10 years ago that I still know to this day. Whereas I think with the tech market, it can be very chop and change. And it's for me personally, I found it harder to maintain those relationships. I've done my best work in the insurance industry as well as an insurance recruiter.
Yeah, and I mean, through you talking there, exactly what you said at the beginning, you can feel tech, but that insurance, you brighten up, and I think that's true for everybody. If you've got an
Yeah.
interest, a passion in what you do, then that then aligns with the other people that you work with, that you're partnering with, and the work blossoms, right? And
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer. Yeah, I guess you said about the financial crisis, COVID, the storms that
Mm.
well, industry recruitment, has had to kind of weather over the years. How have those trends kind of impacted sort of day-to-day operations? How have recruitment companies within your niche had to adjust the way that they operate to handle those kinds of storms, as it were?
Um, I think, to be fair, with COVID, there's definitely been a pattern of post-COVID recruiters and pre-COVID recruiters because there
Right.
was, I mean, my personal experience during COVID, I lost my job twice. So, I felt the full impact, as I'm sure a lot of people did. And because the timings of when I got my new job, I think I mentioned to you previously, my first day at my job was literally the day that Boris Johnson put the whole country into a national lockdown. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a bit like, really kind of worst time to start a new job. And I think I was the only person I knew who was in this predicament. And then, of course, I saw all my friends at my old job get put on furlough. I
Yeah.
wasn't entitled to that. I think throughout the whole of the pandemic, I didn't get furlough. So I just lost my job. But I think in terms of like the trends, personally, how it shaped me is resilience. Like recruitment can pick you up, but can also spit you out when times are tough. And it's just how do you change with the times? And I think the market we're in at the moment, is tough. And recruiters tend to hate blaming the market for the situation, but I think it's quite open to see, especially on LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of, sad stories about recruitment companies shutting down, people being open that they're having to make people redundant. I've got friends in the industry who, as well, who I'm seeing it happen to. And I think it's so it is affecting us as an industry. And I think with the Labour government and what they're doing with national insurance, people are very careful with how they're spending money.
Right.
Um, so I think the main trends that I have seen is cold calling is coming back in. Like you have to, and going out and meeting with people, because I think COVID brought everything back in. Everything was done on Teams. Like you could make placements just emailing CVs and not necessarily even having to meet or pick up a phone. I saw recruiters doing and making a lot of money and
Right.
thinking, gosh, this is easy. But they'd never learned the art of like grafting and picking up the phone. I remember my first recruitment job when I started straight out of uni. I mean, probably can't do this now, but you were in at 7, you stayed till 7. If you weren't making 25 cold calls a day, you were in the MD's office next day. Like, why didn't you make your cold calls? Like, you were never late. Even if I remember once I was going to be 2 minutes late, you had to ring your boss, the MD, 30 minutes before we shift started to say, I'm going to be 2 minutes late. None of this texting or emailing. And if you were sick, your arm had to be hanging off to not go into work. And, we still played up to that notorious recruit. When I was a lot younger, you would go out on a Thursday night till 3 a.m. in the morning, but you were in the office at 7 o'clock the next day. There's no way you wouldn't not turn up to work. Whereas now I think it's very different. It's like, if you're not feeling well, you text, I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming in today. But yeah, I think
Is that like you think like a society culture
I
change,
think,
right?
yeah, I think it's definitely a society culture change. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think there are good to come out of it, because I think it was maybe too much the other way, but maybe
Yeah.
it's going too much this way. I think we need to get a balance. But yeah, I think, sorry, going back to your original question, yeah, I think it's very much getting back to on the phone, cold calling, putting yourself outside your comfort zone, and really having to dig deep. And sometimes I'm given a candidate, or I pick up a candidate and I know they're good. I don't quite know where I can place them or what I can do. So I might spend my whole day looking at insurance companies in a particular area, or insurance broker, and just like cold calling until I get through to the right person. And that can take a whole day just to get a CV out to the market.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people who haven't had that training or haven't had to do that before, if they're like, well, I don't know what to do with this candidate, I don't have a database, so I'm just going to move on to the next person, if that makes sense.
Is that a challenge you would say, within the, financial services insurance area, to do with just the supply and demand, um, you know, in the current climate?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed personally is that companies are still hiring. They're being a lot more picky, because obviously there's a lot more at stake in terms of the money they're spending, the budget they may have for recruitment, so they can't afford to get it wrong. So I think, like, processes are taking a lot longer now. I think people are more conscious about moving because they're scared of what's happening in the economy. I may hate my job right now, but I'm getting paid. Do I want to put myself where I'm starting again? I'm in a probation period, and if anything goes wrong, I could lose my job. So I think processes are taking longer, and people are being more picky, and candidates are being more hesitant. So it is quite a slow, softer market at the moment. I'd say that's kind of like the impact it's been having.
And yeah, and that, I suppose, that's slowing down. That puts then pressure on the likes of yourself to find more people, to find the right clients to work with, to keep that momentum going, I guess, right?
Yeah, so it's very
Business.
much a proactive market. It's very an entrepreneurial market as well, I'd say. Um, yeah, but I have faith that with any market, there's peaks and troughs, and I've been in it long enough that I do fully believe when everything's kind of settled again, we'll come for a time where it's a lot more buoyant, and people are like hiring and moving quickly, and candidates are more, less hesitant, have a bit more faith in the economy, that they're not taking as much of a risk. So it comes back round. I've seen it in my career that, the tough times are tough. And yeah, I completely understand where I'm seeing these businesses shut down and people losing their jobs. And I don't think that's through them not trying hard enough. I think it's
Yeah,
different markets are being affected in different ways. But I think within insurance and financial services, it's something that we're always going to need. Even through the pandemic, like, the insurance market still thrived, but more than anything because there was claims, things that needed to be paid out. If the world stops tomorrow, you still need to insure your car, your house, your business, your employees. Like it, where there are other businesses, when the world stops, the hospitality industry, we've seen it fall on its knees. And yeah, so there are different markets that are affected due to different things.
yeah. So even it slows down, it still needs to keep going, right?
Yeah, 100%.
That leads me nicely, really, to, it's quite a big, broad question, but I know something that you'll be able to give quite a detailed answer to is really, around the misconceptions of the insurance financial services market.
Mm,
And so, in terms of candidates working within that market, but also what clients, what your partners, are looking for from the candidates. Could you give me, a bit of a sense on your opinions on this topic?
Yeah, what as in how the industry is portrayed by people not in the industry and why.
Yeah.
Do you know what? If I could do my life again and come out of uni, I would love to be in the insurance industry. I think it is the most incredible, exciting industry you can be in. And I think it is still very much portrayed as not can I say, sexy industry. And I think that is due to a number of reasons. I think social media, like for example, you've got Suits, you've got ER, you've got Grey's Anatomy, you've got all these different programs that sell those industries, and everyone thinks,
Yeah.
it'd be really cool to be a lawyer, and I'm sure the reality is sometimes very different being a paralegal to what is shown on TV. And I think
Mm.
insurance probably has quite a dated view. It's old men in suits and ties, like in an office with paper files up to
Yeah.
here. And
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
well, yeah. And I think like this is something I'm really keen to change, because I think it's the insurance industry is crying out for young people. They actively want young people to come to the industry. So many of them are doing graduate programs or apprenticeships. And I think the best thing about insurance is, of course, no one wakes up thinking, oh, I'd love to work in the insurance industry, or it's something that I'm passionate about.
No.
But I think there is a passion you probably will have that you can entwine with insurance. So I spoke with someone who is a cyber underwriter, for example, and he said, I was growing up, I was really into, computer games and that side of thing. He called himself a geek in that sense. And he was like, I've now been able to mix my passion with my job, and I find it really interesting. You've got aviation insurance. So if planes and that side of things is something that entertains you, there's sustainability. There's people who are account execs. They're people who will go out on the road, visit clients, and they could specialize within. I'm working with a client at the moment who's looking for like a media account handler who specializes in media and films. So,
Yeah.
you get to go and meet the production teams, you get to go on some cool film sets. I've got a friend of mine who's a high net worth account exec, and high net worth obviously means a lot of the time celebrities. So you're meeting these
Mm.
celebrities to do their insurance. But there's so many different avenues and so many different areas. Like you don't have to do sales. There's underwriting, there's
Yeah.
actuary, there's claims, and I've spoken to quite a few claims handlers who've gone into the industry, and they're like, nothing beats the feeling of like, if someone's lost their house to a fire or something really traumatic. And I think a lot of people still have that opinion that insurance do everything to not pay out, and you panic
Mm.
like, oh my God, I've lost everything. Is my insurance going to cover this? And she's like making that call to say, look, here's a check for 400,000. I know it doesn't fix what's happened, but at least you can move forward with your life. And that sense of like gratitude and knowing you've made a difference to that person's life. She said like
Mm.
it's just something you can't get from anything else.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I just think it's such an exciting, they're so far involved with like tech and AI and all these exciting things that are going on, and everyone in the industry is so friendly, they want to help. There's so many free seminars.
Mm.
um there's qualifications you can do in the industry, and I think 99% of the brokers or insurers will pay to put you through your qualifications. And very similarly to the financial services side as well, with the qualifications I placed someone recently as an IFA administrator, and 6 months in, checked in on her, how she's getting on. She's getting a promotion to an ops manager role. So
Oh wow.
it can take you to so many different areas. And I think it's one of the industries where you don't need a degree. If you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, you do need to specialize in that area. Um, but you can go so far with it. You can, and if money is your main motivator, you can make, a really good salary in insurance when you work your way up. And yeah, It's very exciting. And like I said, if I could do my time again, I love recruitment, but I'm like, oh, I wish I kind of like stuck it out and stayed in the insurance industry. Because I love
And you, Laura, as someone that's actively helping to encourage the industry for women to
Mm.
join into the insurance and financial services. Could you explain a little bit more on your initiative and what you're doing?
Yeah, I guess it was something that kind of came to mind in terms of like the equality in the industry. And I think I noticed because I have been in the industry for 12, 13 years. When I first, it is a lot of men at the top. A lot of my clients are men, all lovely, don't get me wrong, but I was thinking, why are we not seeing females, as much as the top? I know
Yeah.
that gap is narrowing. Um, and having conversations with the market and the people that I work with in the industry, it's, I think, understanding, first of all, why there's a gap in the industry and then making people aware and how we can change it. Um, and, obviously, really obvious things. Women have time off to have children the majority of the time. And when they're having that time out of a business, men are automatically, 12 to 2 years ahead of where they would be in their career. So, um, again, that's probably why you're seeing a lot of men at the top, or it's not normally, but well, yeah, if because of the way this country is set up and childcare fees, and um, a lot of people think, well, I'm only going to earn an extra 200 quid if I go back to work a month, if I covering, so I'll stay at home, look after the children. And obviously they want to do that as well. But again, you're kind
Yeah.
of, I've had women who've had 3 years out of the industry because of this, and then they're having to go back in an entry level role to work their way up again because people
Yeah.
see that time as out of the industry as a like, oh, well, you haven't kept up to date, you don't know what's happening, so starting again from the bottom. And I think like that shouldn't be the way we look at working mums or mothers,
Yeah.
because in that time, gosh, like, I mean, I'm not a mum myself yet, but I can imagine the organizational skills you have to have, like managing tiny little people as well as like managing your own. There's so many skills you get out from that that is very transferable to the workplace. I think it should be seen as a, wow, look at all these things that this person can bring to the table.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's celebrating that, talking about it, and I think because people see that insurance industry is still quite a male dominated industry, it might put people like females off from going into the industry because in their mindset it's more of a more males, or where's my place. And I think things are changing. So
Mm.
a lot of networking events, for example, would tend to be evening beers, socializing. And it's great when you're young, but once you have kids and have a family life, again, it falls on the woman probably to stay at home, look after the kids. So the men are going out doing that networking. And someone I spoke to recently on my blog, she's wanting to do stuff away from that. So they do like lunchtime lunch and learns, or
Yeah.
paint and sip, or, paddle, or incorporating exercise. So it's more inclusive, not just for women, but just for everyone, because not everyone can do things after work. Um, and I think even just by talking about those small things, someone might read that and be like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think, this is not being inclusive. So why don't we do more things during the day or during lunch breaks, all that are non-alcoholic related?
Mm.
And it just becomes more and more of an inclusive environment.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's just something I'm incredibly passionate about, because I think, I don't know if we'll see, I'd like to think we'll see it in my lifetime, but I think the biggest way it's going to change is just, it's an aging population. I think as they move on or retire, the trends are that the younger people coming through is very mixed, 50-50. So as they work their way up, hopefully that's when we can start seeing the shift. And
Yeah.
it's just, I think, yeah, just inspiring the next generation and talking about it and making people aware. And yeah, and that there are still things going on that, we need to talk about as well, the negatives.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it's about making an industry accessible for
Yeah,
everyone, and also
100%.
making the conditions with which the industry with it, which companies operate within those industries, are also accessible and for the longevity, right?
Yeah,
But other professions, it may be easy just to take time off, have a child, come back in to your the position that you were in
mm,
when you left,
mm,
but not the same for every industry if
mm,
it's not the norm, right? And that's
mm,
what I see exactly. You are sort of opening everyone's eyes to that within your
mm,
particular area, because it may be a given in one particular world, right? One
mm,
particular
mm,
country, one particular industry, but not necessarily all of them, right?
yeah,
And just
yeah,
because we're aware that, yes, women have children, take time off, and we need to be aware of that and encourage them back into the workplace, doesn't mean practically that is actually happening in
yeah,
the workplace in every
absolutely.
industry, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just making allowance that because I think there's still this kind of I can't think of the word, but around people who work part time that they're not as they're part committed to their job or
Yeah.
and again a lot of women need part time hours because who else is gonna, if you don't have grandparents down the road, who's gonna do the school runs? And again, I'm not saying that men haven't taken that duty, but again, if you look at statistics, it's still mainly the women. And I spoke to someone again the other week in my blog. She works part-time, but she's one of the top salespeople in the business on part-time hours. And I think again, it's just showing the next generation coming through who might be like, well, I can't do that job because I want to
Mm.
plan to have a family and I know that means I'll have to work part-time hours. So, I can't do that. But it's actually showing like, yeah, you can, because other people are doing it and
Yeah.
and making people aware that part-time doesn't mean part committed.
Yeah, exactly. How, I mean, give us a quick breakdown, Laura. How can people get involved with your initiative, Women in Insurance?
So at the moment, I have just started doing a blog series. I've got a couple that I'm doing today. And that's been a mixture of me reaching out to people saying, hey, similar to what you do, I'm doing a blog even. I'd love to have some time to talk to you, or they're approaching me. But I think the scale I want to take it to is like bigger. I want to be able to put on an event around these subjects that are being brought up and have
Mm.
guest speakers and networking. But I think it's just creating that ripple effect first and gaining the traction and speaking to some amazing women in the industry. And the best thing about these blogs is I've spoken to women just entering their insurance career, and I've spoken to people who are, at the top of their career. So I'm interested in speaking to everyone. It doesn't need to be, I've only had 2 years, so
Mm.
probably not worthy hearing my story, but absolutely it is because a lot of it, people know, how did you get into the industry? How do you find the role? Like, because again, part of it is attracting the younger generation in. So the younger people I'm speaking to help spread that message as well.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more at the end, just if people want to reach out to you directly, how to get involved.
Yeah.
But you mentioned blogs there, so don't be offended, but by the question. But how much does AI play a role in your blog writing?
Yeah, quite a lot to be fair. I mean, I record, so I do a Teams call most of the time, to really get to know people and rather than just sending them a questionnaire and say, can you fill these in?
Yeah.
And then what do I use Teams, for example, and it will record the conversation and record the transcript.
Brilliant.
And it will also do a summary. So I've got my notes, so I don't have to like obviously type while I'm speaking. And then I use those notes to then create the blog. Sometimes if I'm struggling with a certain tone, I'll write the blog and then put it into ChatGPT and just say, can you tweak the tone so it comes across this way? But yeah, I'd say like AI does play a part in absolutely.
Oh, you got that methodology down to a T, right? Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that was really my next question is, I mean, outside of women in insurance,
yeah.
within the recruitment world, how do you see the impact of AI, over, your past sort of 12 years within
Mm.
the industry? How has AI really impacted, really changed the way that recruitment works?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, I think, AI, because I think you can either be scared of it or you can either embrace it. And have seen these things pop up. I haven't actually looked too much into it, like called Jack and Jill. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah, yeah,
yet
yeah.
that. Um which to a recruiter is like, God, that's scary. But I still think within our industry, you do need the personal touch. It's still about meeting people face to face and networking. And I hope that never disappears. But AI has been a fantastic tool. And don't get me wrong, I think because I'm a millennial, I'm not very techy. I've got younger people on my team who are whiz kids at all this stuff. I'm a bit old school, but you know, I've probably used the most basic AI like ChatGPT to help me write a job ad, or if I've got like a tricky email that I need to write but get the tone right, I use that. And we have like a phone system that we're going to be using called Device, and it will transcribe our calls while we're on our phone and then automatically put our notes onto the system. So I guess it's like very much time saving elements. I haven't found anything, touch wood, so far that replaces the crux of my job. I've just found things that enable me to do things quicker and speed up. And yeah. So, but I'm sure there's probably a lot out there that I don't use or I'm not aware about, because probably from my stint in tech, not really understanding it, and being a millennial, I'm not out on the ball as, I don't use TikTok. I'm not really on Instagram at the moment. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah.
very old school in a lot of stuff as well.
Interesting. We had a previous guest on the podcast who he gave a wild sort of prediction saying that he thinks the recruitment industry as a whole will shrink as more companies take on AI technology, get faster in
Mm,
swallowing up candidates, and the speed of being able
mm.
to place candidates at appropriate companies. And as a result, fewer will be needed because they'll just eat up the market from others. Do you see the same kind of thing happening potentially?
Um, It's a hard one. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I am scared of the future of AI, like, 10, 15 years down the line. But I also think, where's the line going to stop? Where are we going to draw the line? Because technically AI could replace everyone's job. I'm sure it'll get that advanced and then the whole economy would just come crashing down because no one has any money. So I try not to get into the black hole of things I can or cannot control. So I just focus on the right now. I do think AI will pick off the softer recruiters. Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing that the recruitment industry is shrinking quite a lot. I'm seeing in Bristol locally, a lot of agencies are shutting down. And I don't know if that's a direct impact from just AI. I think that's a lot to do with the economy and everything else going on. But I do think it will, but like anything, if there's less in the market, then there's more pie for you to go out. And if you're good at your job and you've got these relationships, I'd like to think that relationships will carry you through. And if you're good at your job, um yeah, so I think yes, it will definitely have an impact directly on the industry. And yes, I do think people will lose their job because of AI, but I think they're the, I don't want to say everyone, but like people who haven't had to pick up the skills where you had to call 25 companies a day,
Yeah.
you had to work 12-hour days to kind of do your job. I think, yeah, it will have a knock-on effect. Maybe not to the extent that the whole recruitment industry is going to die on its ass. Hopefully, otherwise, yeah, maybe I'll be going back into the insurance industry. But yeah, I'd like to think we still serve a purpose, and we will for a long time.
Interesting. Yeah, because like you said, the hard times, or the very competitive times that you're saying of cold calling 25 a day, that kind of
Mm,
atmosphere, to then everyone's got a bit easy. There's it's
mm,
really easy to place people, and then suddenly, oh, it's hard again. Oh, and then we've got competition. These
mm,
changes, it
mm,
weeds out
yeah,
companies, it weeds out the industries, I guess. I mean, you
mm.
you mentioned there, the crux of your job, AI, probably can't take the crux of your job. What would you say? This is something I ask everyone, so if it catches you off guard, no worries. But if AI could take um, one bit of your job, one bit of your sort of day-to-day operations, as it were, whether that's sourcing the candidates or marketing to new clients, what part of your job, if AI could just take it completely off your hands, you don't have to do it, what would have the biggest impact?
I think like LinkedIn management. So I think because obviously I'm constantly, I use LinkedIn a lot. It's a big part of my network. It's how I pick up a lot of candidates, how I get my blogs out. So I think and I'm sure there probably is, and it's a very basic tool to be honest, but I think if someone could take over my LinkedIn, add like my relevant connections week on week, because that's probably something I forget to do, like go through all my connections, filter out people aren't necessarily related to the industry I work in. So just that small task I think would really help grow my network and my visibility. And someone to do all my projects on LinkedIn, because say for example I might do like I'll have 55 projects on LinkedIn. So I get notified when certain groups of people in certain geographical areas get open to work, but putting the legwork in to create all those projects are like hours and hours of work. So yeah, if they could take that away from me and streamline my LinkedIn, I think that would be a massive help.
And add on to that, do you think it's it's dangerous on, I'm going to share this on LinkedIn, right? This is going to be on LinkedIn, but quite a few people say the dangers of LinkedIn going forward, that it's becoming very just AI heavy and people will
Mm,
be
mm.
put off by LinkedIn, and that eventually people just won't use LinkedIn anymore. That people will just sort of go off and go do the old school networking, old school kind of recruiting, because it will just be AI bots running the whole of LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Do you see LinkedIn as really necessary in the recruitment world, or is it
Yeah.
if LinkedIn shuts tomorrow, I suppose it's a huge problem for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. I think for me, LinkedIn is a key part of my recruitment. I'd say I'd make over 50%, like maybe 70% of my placements through my LinkedIn network. So it's a huge
Yeah.
tool. I think you can use AI to enable you on LinkedIn, but I think where, like I said, it's just more the adding and putting things into projects. When it comes to writing messages or writing my posts or writing my blogs, I want that to still be me, authentic, because, you can pick out who's written a post or a LinkedIn status with using Chat GPT. So I think as long as you stay, use AI to your advantage, but don't let it take over, because I think that's where people can tell. I get messages all the time, and mainly people trying to sell me probably AI packages or software, and you can tell straight away. And I don't mind, I'm a salesperson, so I'm always open to conversations. But when you can just tell they're automated messages, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're a bit rude. So I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, I'll have some, and usually it's because they're coming up at 3 a.m. in the morning and the person is in the UK apparently. And they'll be like, "Hey, Laura," and then they'll just pitch me this thing, whatever they're trying to sell. And then if I don't reply, it'll be 3 a.m. the next day, like, "Hey, just checking you saw my message above. Are you interested?" Fine, I get that. I probably do that, not at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then the next day it'd be like, well, you haven't responded. So can I assume that I can't remember what he said, but it was just like, this is not how you do business. It's like, I take by the lack of your reply that you don't care about your business and bettering it with AI tools. But it was worded in a way I thought, well, that's a bit, you're not going to get my business. Like, because I'd had 6 messages in a row and then he got really snarky and I hadn't even replied to any of them. But
Yeah,
the way
yeah,
it was written, it just felt like, because it was at a certain time every day, that it was
mm,
a bot. And I think like, yeah,
yeah,
that's going to annoy people, because
yeah.
I really wanted to reply. It'd be like, go away. But I was like, no, I'm not going to rise to it. I just ignored it. But yeah, I think if people are getting messages like that, or persistent messages when they're not
Yeah,
replying, it is that's when people be like, nah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting, and that's where, for using AI for outreach, it comes down to strategy is the most important, and the value, right?
Mm,
Because there are so many tools that can be used, whether it's cold email outreach or LinkedIn outreach or
mm,
any form of outreach, but the most difficult one to be successful with is a direct approach of these are my services. Please
Mm,
buy. Are you
mm,
interested? You are interested. It's like
yeah,
unless your offer is extremely high value, is a
yeah,
no-brainer offer, then it's not going to gain much traction on going a direct route. You have to lead with value in the first place.
mm,
And
mm,
just what you said before, relationship building. That's where AI won't replace, especially if you're dealing with higher ticket type clients or higher ticket sort of services,
mm,
offers.
mm.
There needs to be a person speaking to a person.
Yeah,
There needs to be some sort of value at the forefront,
mm,
which is, I see a lot of people go wrong in that way because there's so many tools to use, but it's the I've mentioned this before, the fable of the carpenter, right, who making a chair or a table, and
mm,
blaming the quality on the tools that
yeah,
he's using. There's nothing wrong with the tools; it's the person wielding the tools
yes,
have a better knowledge, better strategy to attack.
mm,
So yeah,
mm.
3 a.m. Isn't a great time to receive a
No,
direct.
exactly. And I'm just like, that's a dead giveaway unless you're really committed to the job and messaging me at 3 a.m., but you're not getting a response at 3 a.m. So, yeah.
Exactly. What can you say, Laura? Moving forward for for Enable for women in insurance. What's the plans going forward over the next sort of 6 months, 1 year?
Yeah, I think for me personally within Enable, I'm really passionate about growing out my team. So I've got lovely Sophie who's working under me at the moment, who's, doing incredibly well. So I'd like to bring, hopefully in the new year, somebody else onto the team, and grow an authentic, passionate, because there's obviously other insurers, recruiters out there, and doing a very good job. And I think be competitive in the market, you have to have a general passion about what you do and do something slightly different again, which
Yeah.
is why I was like, well, I'm passionate about this, so I'm going to try and do something about it. I think, yeah, just grow my team, obviously get more clients under our belts, and recruit and get through the rest of this year because it has been a tough year, make it out the other side. But no, things are going well. And then in terms of women in insurance, I just really want to take it up to the next level, whether that's having an in-person event or maybe for the first thing, something on a Teams or something where I've got a panel of speakers talking about topics that are important. And yeah, like I said, taking it to an event, and bringing all these amazing people together, and not just women, because it's important that we work together with men and,
Yeah.
not constantly against them, or so having everyone there, an inclusive event,
Yeah.
which isn't
Yeah.
probably a late night event involving booze, but where it can add some real value to the industry and just make a change. And
Yeah.
even off the back of one of my blogs that I did in my early days, to be honest, I was inspired by a lady, Georgina Davis. I woke up one day, I followed the Insurance Times on my phone, which is a publishing article about, obviously, insurance. And there was an article about Georgina, who had been promoted to this really senior position within Zurich. And, I remember reading this, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And, age shouldn't necessarily play a factor in these things. Like, she got
Yeah.
there from her own merit, but, she was young, and it was just so different, against the norm of what the insurance industry would do. So I reached out to her, and she was my first blog, and I said, wow, I love this. Can I, speak with you, do a story? And, I did. And I think it got a couple of hundred likes, which is massive for me. I was like, oh my goodness, people are
Yeah.
reading this. And then I've since done a few more. And another lady that I did one with, I post them. I don't really expect to get much back from it. She messaged me a couple of months later, and she's just like, thank you so much for your blog. It got passed around the whole company. I recently went for a promotion and I got it, and they referenced the blog and the things I
Wow.
spoke about in the blog. And, I just to know, I'm not saying she made the difference, but, the
Yeah.
fact that I had a platform where I could share her story and people actually listened and take notice, like, that's for me, even if it just stays at that level where I'm doing blogs or someone reads it and says, Oh, I'm really interested in the insurance industry. And again, Georgina said after that blog went on LinkedIn, she had 3 or 4 young females reach out to her, be like, I really want to get into the insurance industry. Can you tell me how? And, so even those changes are enough for me, making that impact.
Exactly the trickle effect that
Yeah.
you have one meeting, you have, one talk with one person, but it can have, a trickle down effect to impact, so many people, not just
Mm,
immediately, but over time, because still people may well read that blog, right? 1 year from
100%.
now, 2 years from now, maybe stumble across it and have that impact on that young person or whoever
Yeah,
it might be. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Amazing. I mean, for anyone, inspired, wanting to reach out to you, about the blog or just generally to get in contact with you, Laura, what's the best contact details to get you on?
Yeah, so either on my LinkedIn, Laura Witcher, or my email, which is laura at enable-recruitment.co. Not UK or .com, it's just .co. So yeah, that's probably
.co.
the best one. Yeah.
Don't see too many of those, right?
No, exactly. I mean, sometimes I'm like, it's cool because not one, but then I'm like, do I not get a lot of emails because people think I've forgotten to add the M or the .uk and then they're trying to email me, but
Yeah.
it's .co.
Yeah, brilliant. And I would definitely, encourage, anyone that's interested, or it's inspired some sort of thought or idea in their head, get in touch with you, whether for yourself or for, someone else, or just understanding more about, the message of encouraging women in insurance. I think it's
Absolutely.
a fantastic message, a fantastic, initiative that that you're running, Laura. And I guess in conclusion, in summary of the conversation, a few things that stand out for me. I would say, firstly, um, insurance can be sexy. It doesn't need to be
Yeah.
boring,
Yeah.
right? It has that stuffy, male-dominated kind of stereotype, but it doesn't have to be, and it can be extremely fun and interesting, right?
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
Absolutely right. And I'd say encouraging inclusivity. You spoke a lot, on that. It's not a simple journey.
No.
Um, it is much more complicated, but it does require people's attention. And whether that's, I guess,
Mhm.
in insurance, but any industry, being aware of not just how accessible that industry is for
Mm, mm,
different, different groups in society, but also, the conditions with which can keep people in those positions, and being aware of that. The first point, I think, is really important, and it just reiterates the work that you are doing to raise the awareness, but then also change the industry. And I guess that takes that takes time.
mm,
um
mm.
and a third, sticks out, quite funny. I'm just hearing 3 a.m. message, uh, but it doesn't really need to be said. I think everyone kind of understands. But using AI can be extremely helpful, can be extremely advantageous, but you got to choose the way that you're using it, and then what
100%.
areas of the business that you are. For sure, it's going to have bigger and bigger impacts as we go on, but using it appropriately and not forgetting the human connections, the human relationships.
Yeah.
Those come first and foremost.
Yeah.
Um, Brilliant, Laura. Absolutely fantastic insights, and
Oh,
brilliant having you on.
thank you so much. It's been so lovely to talk about it. And like I said, it's weird being the other side of the fence because it's usually me asking the questions. And yeah, but no, it's lovely to be able to share my story and talk about things I'm passionate about. So thank you, James. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Absolute pleasure having you on. And thank you everyone for listening. Please like and share this video so we can get this out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, James.